Have you ever wondered why Africa, a continent rich in resources, still struggles with poverty? Could it be corruption? Well, let's take a leisurely stroll through the land of ironies, where diamonds are as common as pebbles, yet the people's pockets jingle with emptiness. Picture this, a continent where the rivers flow with oil, yet the lamps of progress flicker feebly. Here the soil practically burps gold, but the people, they can hardly afford brass. It's a paradox, isn't it? A bitter cocktail of wealth and want, shaken not stirred by the expert hands of corruption. You see, in this part of the world, the big fish don't just eat the small ones, they gobble up the pond too. And the cherry on this African cake? The grand masquerade of anti-corruption crusades, where the foxes play watchdog. Oh, the irony. So is corruption an African sport? Buckle up, we're about to find out. Now, let's take a dive into Sub-Saharan Africa, where corruption just a pastime, it's an art form. Picture this, a place where you can bribe a lion to become a vegetarian. Absurd, right? That's just a tip of the iceberg. In Sub-Saharan Africa, the impossible becomes possible, thanks to a little magic trick we call corruption. Take, for instance, the case of a certain city council. Here, traffic lights are more of a suggestion than a rule. If you're wondering why, it's because the traffic police have developed a peculiar form of color blindness. They just can't seem to see red, but a flash of green, in the form of a crisp banknote, brings their vision right back. It's a medical miracle. Now let's not forget about the politicians. They're the maestros, the Picassos of corruption. They can turn a public fund into a personal piggy bank faster than you can say embezzlement. Their motto? Public-private gain. It's really quite ingenious. And folks, is a day in the life of Sub-Saharan Africa. It's like a game of Monopoly, except the bank is always out of money. But don't get it twisted. Corruption isn't exclusive to the government. It's a party and everyone's invited. Now imagine a world where corruption is as common as a cup of morning tea. Yes, welcome to the Sub-Saharan Africa, where corruption isn't just a government thing, it's a lifestyle. It's like the air we breathe, unseen but always present. It's a part of the daily grind, as common as the good morning you offer your neighbor. Let's start with local businesses. Picture this. You walk into a store to buy a loaf of bread, and the cashier asks you for a little something extra to keep the best loaf aside for you. That's not my dear friends. That's corruption. It's like a secret handshake, a wink and a nod, a dance everyone seems to know the steps to. Even the street vendors have jumped on the bandwagon. Want the freshest fruit in the market? Slip an extra note and you've got yourself a deal. It's like a silent auction where everyone's bidding but no one's talking. But here's the kicker. We've all become so accustomed to this way of life that we hardly bat an eyelid. It's like a song that's been played so often, you hum along without even realizing it. And the irony of it all? We complain about corruption while being active participants in the system. It's like complaining about traffic while you're part of the traffic. Ah, the sweet hypocrisy of it all. So in Africa, if you're not part of the corruption, are you even living? But fear not, there's an anti-corruption crusade in Africa. And by crusade, I mean a parade of empty promises. Let's talk about the anti-corruption measures in Africa. They're like a magician's hat, full of surprises, but none of them ever make the rabbit of corruption disappear. Instead, they're like a carnival game, where you aim for the big prize but end up with a cheap plastic toy. In the heart of Sub-Saharan Africa, the anti-corruption measures are like a game of whack-a-mole. Every time a corruption scandal pops up, they smack it down with a new policy or law. But just like the game, another scandal pops up elsewhere, faster than you can say embezzlement. Then we have the corruption courts. Oh, what a spectacle they are. They remind me of a soap opera, with dramatic trials that last for years, only to end with a plot twist. The accused walks free. And the audience, well, they're left with a cliffhanger, waiting for the next episode of the corruption court drama. The anti-corruption commissions are another gem. They are like a gym membership that you get at the beginning of a new year, full of hope and determination. But as the months roll by, the enthusiasm wanes, and by mid-year, it's forgotten in a drawer somewhere. And let's not forget the international aid. It's like a well-meaning relative who gifts you a self-help book for your birthday. The intention is good, but the execution, not so much. the funds end up in the pockets of the very people they were meant to expose. So what's the moral of the story? The anti-corruption measures in Africa are like a poorly written novel, full of plot holes, unbelievable characters, and a climax that leaves you unsatisfied. So, the anti-corruption crusade is more like an exercise in creative writing. Who knew? Let's take a detour and land in Nigeria, a place where tales of corruption are so surreal, they seem straight out of a comedy sitcom. Picture this if you can. The infamous incident where a clerk claimed a snake had ingested 36 million naira from the office safe. Yes, a snake literally swallowed money. And then there are the politicians who unabashedly pocket public funds and bask in the freedom of impunity. The irony only thickens when these same politicians promise to combat corruption during their campaign trails, all while engaging in the very corrupt practices they vow to abolish. So in Nigeria, corruption isn't just a social ill, it's a punchline of a tragic comedy, where the victims of the joke are the citizens, and the laughter reverberates through the corridors of power. So, what have we learned about corruption in Africa? Well, we've taken a safari through the wild terrain of Sub-Saharan shenanigans, where the lions of corruption roar louder than any beast in the savannah. We've danced with the corrupt and the restless, where integrity performs a disappearing act more impressive than Houdini's. We've seen the anti-corruption crusade, a performance worthy of a standing ovation, if only the actors weren't playing both the heroes and the villains simultaneously. And let's not forget our journey through the African dream, where the dream is often a mirage created by the heat of corruption. It's a dream where the currency is not the African CFA franc or the Kenyan shilling, but rather the omnipresent bribe. But in all of this, remember, Africa is not the problem. Corruption is. And there you have it, folks. Corruption in Africa, the world's longest-running, least funny joke. Now, let's leap across to Nigeria, where stories of corruption are so farcical, they might as well be straight from a sitcom. We commence with the infamous snake-swallowed money occurrence. Yes, you digested that correctly. A clerk alleged a snake devoured 36 million naira, approximately $90,000, from the office safe. It's a narrative so outlandish, it makes you question if reality is attempting to surpass fiction. Yet the audacity doesn't cease there. We've got politicians brazenly plundering public funds, treating the national treasury as if it's their personal stash. And the highlight? They're relishing in impunity, striding around as though their pockets aren't brimming with the citizens' money. Adding the icing to this corruption cake, these same politicians vow to wage war against corruption during their hafwot. You got that right! The very individuals pillaging the nation are the same ones pledging to protect it. It's akin to recruiting a fox to safeguard the henhouse. Hence in Nigeria, corruption isn't merely an issue, it's punchline. It's a tragic comedy where the citizenry is the butt of the joke and the laughter resounds in the corridors of power. But let's picture a corruption-free Africa for a moment. What would that scenario look like? A utopia or a dull daily drama? Picture public funds invested for the benefit of the public, funneled into infrastructure development. Picture reliable electricity, improved healthcare accessible to everyone. Imagine a revamped education system with politicians who are not only efficient but also accountable for their actions. So a corruption-free Africa could be a paradise, or simply a place where politicians actually do their jobs. Imagine that. And as we wrap up our tour of corruption in Africa, I'd like to take a moment to remind you that while we've highlighted the absurdity of these situations, they are a very real and damaging aspect of life for the people living in these countries. But there's something we can do. We can spread awareness. We can call out the corruption when we see it. We can support organizations working to fight it. And we can make sure we're not part of the problem. So, if you've enjoyed this safari through the wild world of corruption, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Let's turn this tragic comedy into a triumph of justice. Join us in our journey to shed light on these dark corners of the world. Your voice matters, your actions count. Together, we can make a difference. Remember, change starts with you.